The news spread through Station Helios 9 like fire. A human had survived Cressa. Not just survived. She had held the cub. She had touched the most protected baby in the station and lived. Within hours, everyone knew her name. Tayri, the crazy human woman who had not run. Security moved her to a medical bay for examination. They expected injuries, internal bleeding, broken bones, something. Nobody walked away from a Vorax mother without damage. But the doctors found nothing wrong. Just elevated stress hormones and tired muscles from sitting still for too long. "I do not understand," said the medical officer, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. "She should be dead. The mother should have killed her instantly." June stood in the corner of the room, watching Tayri sit on the examination table. She looked small and tired. Her hair was messy. Her clothes were wrinkled, but there was something in her eyes. A calmness that did not belong to someone who had almost died. "Tell us what happened," June said. "From the beginning. Every detail." Tayri took a deep breath. She had told the story twice already, but she told it again. The cub in the corridor. The sound of Cressa coming. The decision to kneel instead of run. The songs she sang. The cub climbing into her lap. "Why did you not run?" June asked. This was the question everyone wanted answered. Every training manual says to run. Every survival guide. Every piece of common sense. Why did you stay? Tayri thought about this for a long moment. "I do not know," she finally said. "My body would not move. And then I thought about the cub. It was just a baby. It did not know it was in danger. It was just exploring. And I thought, if I run, Cressa will chase me. She will catch me in 2 seconds. But if I stay still, if I show her I am not a threat, maybe she will see that I mean no harm to her child." "That is not how Vorax work," the medical officer said. "They do not think. They act on instinct. Anything near the cub dies. There is no reasoning with them. Then why am I alive?" Nobody had an answer. 3 hours later, something strange happened. Alarms began going off in the Vorax wing. Security rushed to the cameras and saw chaos. Cressa was pacing her habitat, growling and snarling. The cub was in the corner, crying, making high-pitched sounds of distress. It would not eat. It would not sleep. It kept looking at the door like it was waiting for someone. "What is wrong with it?" June asked the xenobehavioral expert on his team. The expert, an older woman named Yuna, studied the footage with wide eyes. "I think it wants the human." "What?" "The cub. I think it bonded with her. Look at its behavior. It keeps looking for her. It keeps calling out. These are signs of separation anxiety." June shook his head. "That is impossible. Vorax cubs only bond with their mothers. Usually, yes. But this cub touched a human. It chose to go to her. It chose to sleep in her lap. In Vorax culture, that means something." Yuna pulled up old research files on her datapad. There are records, ancient records. Before the Vorax became space travelers, they lived in packs on their home world. The mother was the primary protector, but the pack helped raise the young. A cub could choose additional pack members. Once chosen, they became family. You are saying the cub adopted the human? I am saying we need to ask Cressa. Communicating with Cressa was not easy. Vorax vocal structures were different from most species. Standard translators did not work well. But the station had a specialist, an old scholar named Dongho, who had studied Vorax language for 30 years. He went to the habitat with a portable communication device and a lot of courage. Cressa met him at the door. She was agitated, her scales dark with stress. The cub was behind her, still crying. Dongho bowed low and spoke slowly, using the clicking sounds and growls that made up Vorax speech. The conversation took 2 hours. When Dongho came out, he looked pale. "She confirms it," he said. "The cub has claimed the human. It is called a bond choosing, Very rare, very sacred. In the old days, if a cub chose someone, they became part of the mother's family. Protected. Valued, equal to blood. And what does that mean for us? It means the cub needs the human. It will not eat until it sees her again. It might die. June felt a headache forming behind his eyes. And Cressa? Will she kill the human now that the moment has passed? Dongho shook his head. No, that is the strange part. Cressa says the human is now Pack. She will protect her as she protects the cub. She wants to see her. She wants to understand why her child chose this strange, soft creature. They brought Tauri to the habitat. She was nervous, but she did not refuse. Something inside her wanted to see the cub again too. She could not explain it. The little creature had touched something in her heart. When the habitat door opened, the cub ran to her. It jumped against her legs, chirping and crying and making happy sounds all at once. Terry knelt down and held it, and the cub pressed its face against her neck, purring so loud she could feel her bones vibrating. Cressa approached slowly. She was still massive, still terrifying. Every instinct in Terry's body told her to run. But she stayed. She looked up at the huge predator and waited. Cressa lowered her head. She sniffed Terry carefully, taking in her scent. Then she did something that made everyone watching gasp. She pressed her forehead against Terry's forehead. Gently, a greeting. An acceptance dot in Varak's culture. This meant family. Hello, Terry whispered. She did not know if Cressa understood human speech, but she spoke anyway. I promise I will take care of your baby. I do not know why it chose me, but I will not let it down. Cressa made a sound, low and rumbling. The translator on the wall crackled, trying to interpret. After a moment, words came through. Broken, rough, but clear enough. Good. You are Pack now. Hurt cub, I kill you. Protect cub, I protect you. Simple. Terry laughed. It was a strange sound in this strange situation, but she could not help it. Simple, she agreed. I can work with simple. The cub chirped happily, still pressed against her chest. It had found its human. It was not going to let her go dot, and standing in the doorway, watching this impossible scene, June realized that everything on Station Helios 9 was about to change. They had rules about Varaks. They had protocols. They had safety procedures. None of them covered what to do when a Varak's cub adopted a human xenobiologist. They were going to need new paperwork. The Varaks were monsters. Every species in the galaxy knew this. They stood 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that could stop a blade. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. But the most dangerous thing about them was not their bodies. It was their minds. Specifically, the minds of the mothers. A Varak's mother protecting her young was the most dangerous creature in known space. She did not think. She did not hesitate. She simply killed. Anything that came close to her cub died. It did not matter if you were a friend or enemy. It did not matter if you meant no harm. If you were near her baby, you were dead. The Galactic Concord had learned this lesson many times. Too many times. Now they had rules. Simple rules. Stay away from Varak's mothers. Stay away from their cubs. If you see one, turn around and walk the other way. Do not speak. Do not make eye contact. Do not exist in their presence. Station Helios 9 was a massive space station at the edge of Concord territory. Thousands of beings lived there. Traders, scientists, diplomats, workers. Among them was a Varak's diplomatic family. The mother was named Cressa. She had killed 14 workers in 3 cycles. Not because she was evil. Not because she enjoyed it. Simply because they had been too close to her cub. The Concord did not punish her. How could they? It was her nature. Instead, they gave her an entire wing of the station. They blocked the corridors. They rerouted traffic. They put up warning signs in 40 different languages. Stay away from the Varak section. Do not enter. Death awaits. Terry did not plan to enter the Varak section. She was a xenobiologist from Earth, specifically from the Korean Peninsula. She had come to Helios 9 to study alien life forms. She was good at her job. She was careful. She followed the rules. She had read all the warnings about Cressa. But rules do not matter when a baby decides to go exploring. It was a normal day. Terry was walking through Corridor 7, carrying a datapad, reading notes about a species of space jellyfish she was studying. The corridor was supposed to be safe. It was 3 sections away from the Varak's wing. There should have been nothing dangerous here. She turned a corner and stopped. Small creatures sat in the middle of the corridor. It was about the size of a large dog, covered in soft green scales. Its eyes were golden, like 2 small suns. It looked up at Terry and made a sound. A chirp. Like a bird, but deeper. Curious. Terry felt her blood turn to ice. She knew what this was. A Varak's cub. Cressa's cub. The most protected baby in the entire station. It had somehow escaped from the secured wing. It had wandered through corridors and doors and security checkpoints. And now it sat here, looking at her with innocent golden eyes, which meant Cressa would be coming. Terry's training told her to run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to turn around and sprint as fast as possible. Put distance between herself and the cub. Find security. Hide. Do anything except stand here like an idiot. But she could not move. The cub chirped again. It tilted its head. Then it stood up on its small legs and took a step toward her. Then another. It was approaching her. This tiny, deadly, precious thing was walking straight toward a human. Behind her, Terry heard the sound. Heavy footsteps. Claws on metal. Fast. Getting faster. Cressa had found her cub's trail. Terry had perhaps 10 seconds to live. The footsteps grew louder. Terry could hear breathing now. Deep, rumbling breaths. The sound of a predator hunting. She should run. She knew she should run. But the cub was still walking toward her, chirping happily. And something in Terry's brain made a decision without asking her permission. She knelt down. She made herself small. Non-threatening. She lowered her eyes away from the cub, looking at the floor instead. And she began to speak. Soft words. Gentle words. Korean lullabies her grandmother used to sing. Songs about mountains and rivers and peaceful sleep. Her voice trembled, but she kept singing. The cub stopped walking. It listened. Its golden eyes grew wide. Cressa came around the corner like a nightmare made real. 8 feet of muscle and scales and fury. Her claws were extended, each one as long as a knife. Her mouth was open, showing rows of teeth designed to tear flesh. She saw Terry. She saw a threat near her baby. She charged. Terry kept singing. She did not look up. She did not scream. She kept her eyes on the floor and sang about a rabbit that lived on the moon. Her voice cracked. Tears ran down her face. But she sang. The cub did something unexpected. It ran to Terry. Not away from her. To her. It pressed against her knees, chirping loudly, and then it climbed into her lap. This tiny Varak's baby curled up against a human and made a sound like a broken engine. It was purring. Cressa stopped. She was 2 meters away. Close enough that Terry could see every scale on her body. Close enough to smell her breath, hot and metallic. The Varak's mother stood frozen, her claws still extended, her body ready to kill. But she did not move because her cub had chosen. Terry did not understand this yet. She did not know that Varak's cubs selected their own family. She did not know that when a cub claimed someone, The mother had to accept it. She only knew that she was still alive, still singing, still holding a baby predator in her lap, while its mother watched with eyes that held something other than murder. Minutes passed. The song ended. Terry started another one. The cub purred louder. Kressa slowly lowered her claws. She sat down on the floor, her massive body folding with surprising grace. She did not take her eyes off Terry, but she was not hunting anymore. She was watching, waiting, trying to understand this strange human who had not run station security found them 20 minutes later. They came with weapons and fear and full body armor. They expected to find a body. Instead, they found something impossible. A human woman sitting cross-legged on the floor, singing softly in Korean. A Vorax cub sleeping peacefully in her lap. And a Vorax mother, the most dangerous creature on the station, sitting quietly nearby like a very large, very deadly guard dog. June, the head of security, could not believe what he was seeing. He had worked on Helios 9 for 5 years. He had seen Kressa kill. He had cleaned up the bodies. And now this small human woman sat with the cub like it was a pet. That is impossible, he whispered. Terry looked up at him. Her face was wet with tears. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Apparently not. The Galactic Concord was a massive government. It controlled thousands of planets and millions of space stations. It had laws for everything. Trade laws, criminal laws, environmental laws, marriage laws between different species, laws about artificial intelligence, laws about cloning, laws about time travel, even though time travel did not exist yet. But they did not have a law for this. Ambassador Velik sat in his office on the administrative level of Station Helios 9. He was a Talani, a species known for their 4 eyes and their love of paperwork. In his 300 years of government service, he had processed every kind of document imaginable. Citizenship transfers, territorial disputes, war crime tribunals. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until today. A human, he said slowly, blinking his 4 eyes one at a time. Sharing custody with a Vorax mother. Tara sat across from his desk, looking uncomfortable. She had not slept well in 3 days. The cub would not stop crying when she left the habitat, and she felt guilty every time she heard it through the station speakers. Beside her chair, Kressa stood like a statue. She had refused to let Terry come to this meeting alone. The human was Pack now. Pack stayed together. The cub has imprinted on her, explained Yuna, who had been brought in as an expert witness. It is a natural Vorax bonding process. The child chose its additional family member. The mother has accepted this choice. Rejecting it would go against their deepest cultural values. I understand the biology, Velik said. He tapped his long fingers on the desk. What I do not understand is how we are supposed to document this. We have custody laws. Very clear custody laws. They cover biological parents, adopted parents, surrogate parents, artificial parents, clone parents, and 17 other categories. None of them mention random human who happened to be in the wrong corridor. I was not in the wrong corridor, Terry said quietly. The cub was. That is not the point. Kressa growled. The sound was low, but it filled the room like thunder. Velik's 4 eyes widened, and he leaned back in his chair. Perhaps we should focus on solutions rather than problems, Yuna suggested quickly. The discussion went on for hours. Legal experts were called in. Cultural specialists. Child development officers. A historian who specialized in Vorax traditions. Everyone had opinions. Everyone had concerns. The main problem was simple. Kressa could not be separated from her cub for more than a few hours. Her maternal instincts would not allow it. She would become violent, dangerous, unpredictable. But the cub also could not be separated from Tyree. It would stop eating. It would become sick. It might die. So the human must stay with the Vorax, someone said. She cannot live in the habitat, someone else argued. She is a scientist. She has work. She has a life. Then bring the cub to her. Without the mother? Impossible. Cressa will tear the station apart. Then bring both of them. Where? The human quarters are too small. The Vorax section is restricted. Round and round the arguments went. Terry listened quietly, feeling more and more frustrated. Everyone was talking about her like she was not in the room. Like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person. Finally, she stood up. Stop, she said. Her voice was not loud, but something in it made everyone go quiet. Even Cressa turned her massive head to look at her. I am not a package to be delivered somewhere. I am a person. And this cub, this baby, it chose me. I do not fully understand why, but it did. So stop arguing about logistics and ask me what I want. Ambassador Velik blinked. What do you want? Terry thought carefully before answering. I want to do my job. I am a xenobiologist. I came here to study alien life. Well, now I have the chance to study the rarest alien relationship in the galaxy. A human-Vorax bond. Let me do that. Let me spend time with the cub. Learn about it. Care for it. I do not need to live in the habitat full time, but I want regular access. Scheduled visits. Enough time for the cub to feel secure and for me to form a real connection. How much time? Weekends, Terry said. Every weekend. Friday evening to Sunday night. I stay in the habitat with Cressa and the cub. The rest of the week, I work normally, but I can visit for a few hours each day. The room was silent. That is surprisingly reasonable, Velik admitted. I am a reasonable person. Cressa made a sound. The translator on the wall crackled. Acceptable. Human comes weekends. I watch. I learn. If human is good to cub, she stays pack. If human is bad to cub, I eat her. Terry nodded. Fair. And so, for the first time in Galactic Concord history, they created a new document. Form 7749X, Interspecies Shared Custody Agreement. It had 3 signatures at the bottom. Ambassador Velik for the Concord, Terry for herself, and a claw mark from Cressa, pressed into the paper like a stamp. The news spread quickly. Some people thought it was amazing. A new era of human-alien cooperation. Others thought it was insane. A human playing parent to a predator species. Dangerous. Foolish. A disaster waiting to happen. Terry ignored all of them. She had made a promise to a baby, and she intended to keep it. The first official weekend came on station. Day 47. Terry packed a small bag with clothes, books, and some human snacks she thought the cub might like to try. She walked through the security checkpoints, past all the warning signs, and into the Vorax habitat. The cub ran to greet her before she was fully through the door. It jumped and chirped and spun in circles, so happy that it nearly knocked her over. Terry laughed and knelt down, letting the little creature climb into her arms. Hello, little one, she said softly. I missed you too. She had decided to give the cub a name. The Vorax did not name their young until they were older, until they had proven themselves. But Terry was human, and humans named things they loved. Bomi, she whispered. Your name is Bomi. It means spring, because you are a new beginning. The cub chirped at the sound of its new name, Bomi. It liked a .krsa watched from across the room. She did not approach. She did not interfere, but her eyes followed every movement Terry made, every word she spoke. She was learning this strange, soft creature, who had somehow become family. That first weekend, Terry read stories to Bomi, Korean folktales about tigers and rabbits and clever foxes. Bomi did not understand the words, but it loved the sound of her voice. It fell asleep in her lap every night, purring like a small engine. Cressa began sitting closer each day. By Sunday, she was only a meter away. Her huge body curled around Terry and Bomi like a protective wall. When Terry left on Sunday night, Bomi cried. But it did not cry as hard as before. It knew now that she would come back. The bond was growing stronger. And somewhere in the administrative files of Station Helios 9, Form 7749X sat in its folder, quietly making history. 6 months passed. The arrangement became routine. Every weekend, Terry walked into the Virax habitat like it was her second home. She knew where to sit. She knew what foods Bomi liked. She knew how to read Cressa's moods by the color of her scales. Bomi was growing fast. The cub now reached Terry's hip, and its soft baby scales were hardening into the dark green armor of an adult Virax. But it still acted like a baby around Terry. It still wanted to sit in her lap, even though it was getting too big. It still fell asleep to the sound of her voice. Cressa had changed too. She no longer watched Terry with suspicion. She watched with something closer to respect. Sometimes, when Terry was reading to Bomi, Cressa would make soft sounds. The translator could not interpret them, but Yuna believed they were expressions of approval. The mother was happy with her cub's choice. The station had adapted to the strange family. Workers no longer avoided the Virax section with terror. They avoided it with polite respect instead. Some even waved at Terry when they saw her in the corridors. She had become something of a celebrity. The human who lived with monsters. The woman who had earned a predator's trust. Everything was peaceful. Everything was calm. Then the pirates came. The Roktal Syndicate was one of the most brutal criminal organizations in the outer sectors. They raided stations for resources, slaves, and anything else they could sell. They had destroyed entire colonies. They had killed thousands. The Galactic Concord had been hunting them for years, without success. Station Helios 9 had something they wanted. Rare minerals stored in the lower cargo bays. Enough to fund their operations for a decade. They had been planning the attack for months. Watching the station. Learning its defenses. Waiting for the right moment. They chose a weekend night. Most of the station's security was on light duty. The corridors were quiet. Perfect conditions for a strike. The first explosion hit the eastern docking bay at exactly midnight. Terry was in the Virax habitat when it happened, reading to Bomi from her datapad. The floor shook. The lights flickered. Alarms began screaming through the station speakers. Warning. Security breach. All personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Bomi whimpered and pressed against Terry's legs. The cub could sense danger. Its scales were darkening with stress. Cressa rose to her full height. Her claws extended automatically. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for threats. She moved to the door and listened. Through the metal, they could hear shouting, gunfire, screams. Stay here, Cressa growled through the translator. Protect cub. She opened the door and disappeared into the chaos. Terry wanted to follow. She wanted to help. But she had made a promise. She was packed now. Her job was to protect Bomi. She pulled the cub to the back corner of the habitat, behind a heavy piece of furniture. She turned off the lights. She held Bomi close and whispered soft words, trying to keep the cub calm. Minutes passed. The sounds of fighting grew closer. Terry heard explosions. She heard energy weapons. She heard something that might have been Cressa roaring. Then silence. Then more fighting. The habitat door exploded inward. 3 Roktal soldiers entered the room. They were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and black eyes. They carried heavy weapons. They moved with professional efficiency, scanning the darkness. "Clear the room," one of them ordered. "Take anything valuable." Terry's heart was pounding. She pressed herself against the wall, holding Bomi tight. The cub was trembling, but it stayed quiet. It understood that silence meant survival. One of the soldiers moved toward their hiding spot. His weapon light swept across the floor, getting closer and closer. Terry made a decision. She stood up. The soldiers spun toward her, weapons raised. They saw a small human woman holding a Varax cub. They laughed. "Look at this," one said. "A pet keeper. How much do you think a baby Varax would sell for?" "A fortune. The collectors would pay anything for one." They moved toward her. Terry did not step back. She stood in front of Bomi, blocking the cub with her body. "You should leave," she said. Her voice was calm, steady. "You do not want to be here when the mother comes back." The soldiers laughed again. "The mother? We killed a big one in the corridor. Took 3 grenades, but it went down." Terry felt ice in her chest. "Cressa? Dead? No, it could not be true." But she did not let the fear show on her face. "Then you made a mistake. Because now there is nothing stopping her from killing you." "What are you talking about?" "I just said we killed it. Did you check if it was dead?" The soldiers looked at each other. Before they could answer, Cressa came through the ceiling. She had not used the door. She had crawled through the ventilation system, moving silently despite her massive size. She dropped into the room like death falling from the sky. The first soldier died before he could scream. Cressa's claws opened him from throat to stomach. The second soldier managed to fire his weapon once before she grabbed his head and twisted. The third tried to run. He made it 2 steps before she caught him. The sounds were terrible. Wet and crunching and final. When it was over, Cressa stood in the middle of the room, covered in blood that was not her own. She was injured. Terry could see burn marks on her scales, places where grenades had scorched her skin. But she was alive. She was standing, and she was looking at Terry with something that might have been pride. "You did not run," Cressa said through the translator. "I promised to protect Bomi." "Yes, you kept promise." "Good pack." Bomi ran to its mother, chirping and crying and rubbing against her legs. Cressa lowered her head and nuzzled the cub, making soft sounds of comfort. Then she looked at Terry again. "More enemies in station. We fight together." It was not a question. Terry looked at the dead soldiers. She had never killed anyone. She had never fought anyone. She was a scientist, not a warrior. But she thought about the other people on the station. The workers. The families. The children. They needed help. Together, she agreed. The next 3 hours were chaos. Cressa moved through the station like a force of nature, hunting pirates and tearing them apart. Terry stayed close behind, carrying Bomi, directing the Varax toward survivors who needed rescue. They made a strange team. The predator and the scientist. The mother and the weekend parent. Security forces eventually arrived with reinforcements. They found the pirate attack already broken. Most of the Roktal soldiers were dead. The survivors had surrendered, terrified of the monster hunting them through the corridors. When the fighting ended, June found Terry exactly where she had been at the start. In the Varax habitat, sitting on the floor, Bomi sleeping in her lap, Cressa sitting beside her, grooming blood from her claws like nothing unusual had happened. "You should be dead," June said. "The pirates hit your section first." Terry shrugged. "I had backup." Cressa made a sound, low and rumbling. The translator struggled, then produced a single word: family. The attack on Station Helios 9 became famous throughout the galaxy. News networks, carried the story for weeks. A small space station had defeated one of the most dangerous pirate organizations in known space. The heroes were an unlikely pair. A Varax mother and a human scientist. A predator and her pack. The Galactic Concord sent investigators. They interviewed survivors. They reviewed security footage. They wrote reports that would be studied in military academies for generations. The official conclusion was simple but revolutionary. The Varax protective instinct, previously believed to be exclusively maternal, appears capable of expansion to include adopted pack members. Subject Cressa demonstrated equal, defensive aggression toward threats to both her biological offspring and her offspring's chosen human guardian. Further study recommended. Tari read the report in her new quarters. She had been given permanent residential status in the Varax section. Not just weekend visits anymore. She lived there now. Her old room in the human quarters stood empty. The move had happened naturally. After the attack, Bomi had refused to let Tari leave. Not for work. Not for meals. Not for anything. The cub followed her everywhere, sleeping outside her door as she tried to maintain separate living space. Cressa had watched this behavior for 1 week before making a decision. Human stays, she had announced through the translator. Pack lives together. This is the way. Nobody argued with a Varax mother, especially not one who had single-handedly killed 30 pirates. So Tari moved in. The habitat had been expanded to accommodate her. A small room was built in one corner, with human furniture and human climate controls. It looked strange next to the rest of the space, which was designed for Varax comfort. But Bomi loved it. The cub would wander between Tari's room and Cressa's sleeping area, happy that both its family members were close. Life settled into a new routine. Mornings, Tari worked on her research. She had become the galaxy's leading expert on Varax human relationships, which was easy since she was the only example. She wrote papers. She gave interviews. Scientists from dozens of planets sent her questions. How did the bonding work? What did Varax cubs eat? How intelligent were they really? She answered everything, sharing knowledge that could help other species understand their neighbors. Afternoons, she taught Bomi. The cub was growing quickly now, almost as tall as Tari herself. Its scales had fully hardened. Its claws were sharp. But its mind was still young, still learning. Tari taught it languages, mathematics, history. She read it stories from Earth and stories from other worlds. Bomi absorbed everything like a sponge, curious about the universe beyond the station. Evenings, the family spent together. Tari would cook human food, which Bomi found fascinating even though it could not eat most of it. Cressa would bring her own meals, which Tari found horrifying but tried not to judge. They would sit together in the main area of the habitat, comfortable in each other's presence. Cressa still did not speak much. Varax were not a chatty species, but she had learned to communicate with Tari in other ways. A tilt of the head meant approval. A low rumble meant contentment. A press of claws against Tari's shoulder meant affection. These small gestures carried more meaning than words. One evening, about a year after the attack, Tari was sitting with Bomi, showing the young Varax pictures of Earth on her datapad. Mountains, oceans, cities, forests. Bomi stared at each image with wide golden eyes, asking questions that the translator struggled to interpret. Why is sky blue? Why is water wet? Why do humans build things so small? Tari answered each question patiently, enjoying the cub's endless curiosity. Cressa sat nearby, watching. After a while, she moved closer. She looked at the pictures too. Mountains seemed to interest her most. Your home world? She asked. Yes, Korea, a small country on a planet called Earth. Beautiful. Tari blinked. It was the first time Cressa had complimented anything human. You think so? Strong mountains. Good for hunting. Good for families. Maybe someday I can take Bomi there. Show it where I grew up. Cressa considered this. Her eyes moved from the datapad to Teri to Bomi and back again. You would return to your world? Just for a visit. My home is here now. The Varak's mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she made a sound that Teri had never heard before. Low and rhythmic, soft. It took a moment to recognize it. Laughter. Cressa was laughing. What is funny? Teri asked. You, small soft human, lives with predators, calls this home. Cressa's scale shifted, taking on a lighter shade that Teri had learned meant happiness. Brave, stupid, very human. Is that a compliment? Yes, Bomi chirped happily, sensing the good mood. It pressed against both of them, one side touching Teri, the other side touching Cressa. Connecting its family. Teri felt tears in her eyes. Not sad tears. Happy tears. She had come to this station to study alien life from a distance. To be scientific, objective, clinical. Instead, she had become part of something she never expected. A family that crossed species. A bond that crossed biology. A love that crossed every boundary the galaxy had created. I have something for you, she said to Cressa. A gift. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small object. A translator device, but custom-made, upgraded, designed specifically for Varak's vocal structures. Donho helped me build it. It should let you speak more clearly. Full sentences instead of fragments. Cressa took the device carefully. Her massive claws looked strange, holding something so delicate. She examined it, then placed it against her throat where translators worked best. Testing, she said. The word came out clear. Perfect. No static. No delay. Testing 1, 2, 3. How does it feel? Cressa was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again, and her voice was different. Not just clearer, softer, more personal. I have wanted to say something to you for many months. The old translator could not express it properly. Too many words. Too much meaning. But now, perhaps now I can try. Teri waited. When you first came to my cub, I wanted to kill you. Every instinct screamed at me to destroy the threat. But something in your eyes stopped me. Not fear. Humans always have fear. Something else. Determination. Care. You looked at my baby like it mattered to you. Like it was precious. It was. It was. It is. I know. I see it every day. You love my cub as much as I do. Different love. Human love. But real love. True love. Cressa paused. Among my people, there is a word. It does not translate well into other languages. It means the one who was not born to you, but was chosen by fate to be family. It is the highest honor a Varaks can give to an outsider. What is the word? Cressa said something in her native language. A sound like rocks grinding together, mixed with a gentle hum. Then she translated. Sister mother. You are my cub's sister mother. You are my pack's second heart. You are family, Teri. Not by blood, but by choice. By love. Forever. The tears were falling freely now. Teri did not try to stop them. Bomi chirped and tried to lick the tears from her face, which made her laugh through the crying. Cressa rumbled with amusement. Outside the habitat, Station Helios 9 continued its endless rotation through space. Workers worked. Traders traded. Diplomats argued about things that seemed important, but probably were not. The galaxy spun on, full of species that did not understand each other. That feared each other, that built walls and wrote laws to stay apart. But in one small corner of one small station, a human woman sat with a Varak's mother and her shared child, watching pictures of Earth and dreaming about the future. somewhere in the Concorde's administrative files. Form 749X still sat in its folder, the first of its kind, a simple document that said a human could share custody with an alien predator. But it had become something more than paperwork. It had become proof that family was not about species, not about biology, not about where you came from or what you looked like. Family was about choice. Family was about showing up again and again, even when it was hard. Family was about protecting those you loved, no matter the cost. The Virax had known this for thousands of years. Now the galaxy was starting to learn.